Breaking tonight, a single moment at Davos has changed how NATO, allies, and Washington now look at Canada. What began as a routine appearance at the World Economic Forum has now turned into a global political signal that cannot be ignored. Canada did not just speak. Canada was heard. And the response that followed is rewriting assumptions that many believed were settled. For months, the dominant narrative was simple. Canada would stay quiet. Canada would avoid confrontation. Canada would adapt to pressure coming from Washington. That belief shaped expectations across diplomatic, financial, and military circles. But Davos did not follow the script many had written in advance. Standing before global leaders, Prime Minister Mark Carney did not raise his voice. He did not name names. He did not threaten retaliation. Instead, he challenged the logic that has guided global power for decades. He said the old order is not coming back. And more importantly, he said it should not be mourned. That statement alone landed hard. But what followed mattered more. Carney argued that middle powers have spent too long negotiating from weakness, isolated and divided. He suggested a different path. Cooperation, coordination, strength in numbers. Economic integration, he warned, should never be turned into a weapon. And sovereignty, he made clear, is not a bargaining chip. Many expected silence after those words. Instead, the reaction came fast, public, and unmistakable. Within hours, leaders across Europe, Asia, and North America began doing something rare in modern diplomacy. They openly endorsed Canada's message. From Finland, President Alexander Stubb described the speech as one of the strongest delivered at Davos. Not polite praise. Not diplomatic courtesy. A clear endorsement from a leader who understands pressure politics firsthand. Then came NATO. Sitting on the same stage, NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte delivered a statement that changed the entire equation. He said Canada is back as a key NATO player and leader on the world stage. Those words matter. NATO does not speak casually. When the head of the world's most powerful military alliance signals renewed leadership, allies take note and rivals adjust their calculations. Timing made it even louder. At the very moment Washington was escalating trade threats, questioning alliances, and applying pressure on partners, NATO's top official was publicly aligning with Canada's vision. That was not coincidence. That was coordination. Behind closed doors, the message was spreading even further. In the United States itself, governors and senior political figures were privately circulating Carney's speech. Not to criticize it, but to study it. One American governor admitted that the speech reached the highest levels of political discussion and even rattled the White House enough to be mentioned directly. Think about that for a moment. A Canadian Prime Minister delivers a speech. American leaders quietly share it with each other. NATO endorses its message. And Washington responds defensively. That is not isolation. That is influence. Of course, not everyone welcomed the shift. Some voices in Washington dismissed the speech as noise. Complaints were made. Accusations followed. But while critics were talking, something else was happening. Across the Pacific, Australia's top economic leaders publicly aligned themselves with Canada's approach. They echoed the same idea: cooperation within international law, resistance to pressure, and strength through partnerships. Former Australian leaders went further, openly stating that middle powers must stop accepting intimidation as normal behavior. They warned that economic dependence is now a strategic vulnerability, not a safety net. In Europe, lawmakers shared the speech online, calling it a manifesto for free nations standing up to bullying. Not a speech, a manifesto. That word matters. Manifestos are not about moments. They are about movements. From Sweden, senior political figures referenced historic resistance against forced compliance, arguing that pretending systems work when they do not only strengthens those who abuse them. The message was clear. Performance politics is over. Honesty is back. And then came Mexico, perhaps the most telling endorsement of all. Mexico, deeply tied to the United States through trade and geography, publicly supported Carney's message. The Mexican president described the speech as timely and intelligent. Opposition figures agreed. That was not symbolic. That was strategic. Mexico understands leverage. Mexico understands pressure. And Mexico recognized an opportunity to reshape regional dynamics. This is where NATO's role becomes critical. NATO is not only a military alliance, it is a political signal generator. When NATO leaders endorse a country's vision, they are not just talking about defense. They are talking about values, coordination, and future alignment. Canada's renewed presence within NATO sends a message beyond tanks and troops. It says Canada is shaping discussions, not just attending them. It says Canada is contributing ideas, not just commitments. And it says allies see Canada as a stabilizing force at a time when unpredictability is rising. The implications are significant. If middle powers coordinate economically, politically, and diplomatically, the leverage of any single dominant power weakens. Not through confrontation, through balance. That is what frightened critics missed. This was never about opposing one country. It was about ending a system where pressure replaces partnership. And the world responded. From Europe to Asia, from NATO headquarters to North American capitals, leaders echoed the same theme. The old rules no longer work. Cooperation must replace coercion. And leadership must come from those willing to stand firm without shouting. Canada did not stand alone in Davos. Canada stood at the center of a growing alignment. That alignment includes NATO partners, democratic allies, and middle powers who understand that silence no longer guarantees safety. It guarantees vulnerability. The question now is not whether the message landed. It clearly did. The question is what happens next. Because if this coordination continues, if NATO partners reinforce Canada's role, and if middle powers act together instead of separately, global power dynamics will not shift gradually. They will shift decisively.